So let's chat with our featured guest this morning. Scott Bailey is with us. Give me the name of the company correctly. I see Sandler Training, Sandler's Selling System, and then I see just Sandler.
It all works, Ron.
It all works.
But we are a training organization.
What do you train? I mean, I'm oversized. Is that the kind of training you're talking about?
Are you trainable?
With enough treats? Maybe not.
We focus on sales and sales leadership, sales management, VPs of sales, chief revenue officers, and the like, based upon something called the Sandler Selling System.
Okay. And so before the broadcast, I had shared with you that I just read a book that's, I guess, by the CEO or owner or
Dave Matz,
a significant individual in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Great book.
Mm-hmm. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar.
That was the one.
Second edition.
Okay, second edition. Okay, so hopefully Josh can hear you better. I've got you maxed out on the mic. Great book. So is that book legitimate? Is that really what an overview of how you train?
Well, it's a story of David Sandler, our founder, who about 50 years ago discovered a more powerful, authentic way of selling based upon what we call pattern interrupts. And what I mean by pattern interrupt is doing literally the opposite of what most salespeople do, because most people don't like to be sold. In fact, how do you feel when you're in a selling situation where you feel somebody's trying to sell you? Do you feel a little bit of pressure, resistance?
I feel a significant urge to leave.
Exactly. And that's why
compelling, I guess.
That's why selling is such a bad name. But you mentioned earlier, everybody sells. You ever been on a job interview or a date? You're in a selling situation.
Right.
And some function, if you own a business or you're a realtor, whatever you're doing, you need to bring in revenue. And what we found is there's systems to do that. And you can sell by the seat of your pants, work hard, fly by night kind of thing. Or you could use a proven system like the Sandler Selling System.
And it's got a lot of great tools in there, is what or concepts.
Yeah.
That
tons of concepts.
I felt, just realizing that you're not gonna, you brought up the idea of dating, so I'm gonna just run with that one, right? You go out on a first, you find somebody that you're attracted to, and you're not trying to sell them on a lifelong relationship. In the first hello,
you're trying to get the next date is what you're
right.
trying to do.
And that was one of the things I took from the book is realize what are you trying to accomplish, and it's not step 17, right? If I go to the gym tomorrow, I'm not going to lose 50 pounds by the end of the week.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, I am one that I bought it. They said, get a gym membership and you'll lose weight. I bought the membership. I haven't lost anything.
Ron, where most sales training fails is that people don't reinforce what they learn. They go to 1 or 2 day seminar and they think they're trained. It just doesn't work that way. The techniques that you learn in sales are perishable. You have to practice them. Just like a new language. I'm guessing that you don't speak German as an example.
No, you're guessing correct.
Okay, so if you were to learn a foreign language like German, you'd go through some steps. You might take an elementary German class in 2 days. You'd be able to learn 300 words, say please and thank you, order some food, but you wouldn't be able to have much of a conversation with somebody who's fluent in German. So the next level would be conversational German and then fluency.
Sure.
So our system it's like learning a language, and it really is. Sandler Selling System is a language. It's a language of selling.
It was very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to me like you got to practice.
Yeah. I mentioned the term pattern interrupt. This is what David Sandler discovered. So we live in a world of opposites. Think about this: up, down, left, right, heads, tails. There's sales training.
Male, female.
You could say that on your show. We can say that today. There's sales training and there's Sandler training. Literally the opposite of what is taught in other courses. I mentioned the term.
Give me an example. What do you mean by that? That an opposite?
I mentioned the term pattern interrupt. Every salesperson who has classic training knows the ABC rule. Always be closing. Always be closing. Generally, it's based upon a model of numbers. Get in front of as many people as you can. Give them all this great information, try to convince them to buy, and then ask for the business where they ask for a yes. What do you typically tell a salesperson when he or she goes to close you? What do you typically say?
No, thanks. Just looking.
some kind of
Brush off.
wishy-washy, think it over, which is really closer to a no, right?
Sure.
Our data shows that 93% of think it overs are actually no's. So a pattern interrupt to closing for a yes at the end of the sales presentation would be literally closing for a no at the beginning. Ron will be meeting for an hour today. At the end of our meeting, you and I may determine we don't have a fit. And if that's the case, just tell me that. So get the no out of the way right now. And all that does is leave room for yeses because we get the no out of the way up front.
Makes sense to me. Continue our conversation this morning. Scott Bailey is with us. Sandler Training is the company that he is with, giving us some education. So, Scott, how'd you get into this? I mean, how'd you become a trainer?
First of all, becoming a salesperson is not a career goal for most people, right? I'm highly introverted, and I wanted to be a pilot growing up because my father was an Air Force fighter pilot, World War II. But anyway, I went on to major in biology in college because when I found
fighter pilot to biology.
Well, I needed glasses.
Okay.
And my dad had to sit me down and break my heart and say, son, you're not going to get in the Air Force because you got to have perfect vision. So we had to go to plan B, and I happened to test well in math and science. So I majored in biology with the goal of becoming an optometrist. Well, after I got out of college, I needed a little break. I needed to make some money. So I decided to try sales. And back then, the medical industry was hiring biology majors because we can go talk to doctors. We know the language of science. So I sold medical products for 20 years and was pretty successful at it. But after about 20 years of that, I realized I can't work any harder. I mean, it's hard work. And at some point, you got to make a decision. And we all know how to work hard. But what Sandler's about is working smart. You already know how to work hard. How about working smart? So I had heard about the Sandler selling system, and I realized that this was my career path. I'm 40 years old, and I am a salesperson. Get yourself some professional training outside of what your company's provided for you, which is primarily product knowledge. So I found myself sitting in front of a Sandler trainer inquiring about his program. Next thing I know, I'm in his program, and 6 months later, I had seen my sales take another 30% increase with half the work. I worked half as hard and got a 30% return. Why?
That's nice.
Well, why? Because most salespeople are practicing in front of their customers. They don't take the time to practice with other professional people and learn a true system. Rather than winging it, have a true system of selling. And that's what the Sandler selling system did for me. And the company had some problems with the FDA, so I realized how cool this is. And I bought my franchise. It is a franchise 29 years ago this summer.
Wow.
So I've been at this. I was a client of Sandler's, and I saw what it did for me in medical sales. And I've been continuously at this business for 29 years. We're based in Irvine, California.
So can you do this? So do I have to be in medical sales to follow the system?
No, the system doesn't care what you sell. It's agnostic. It's a set of principles that you can apply in any industry. Real estate, software, doesn't matter. We have clients from all across the board. And that's the benefit of it, because it becomes a true mind share of all that collective knowledge.
That's interesting, because so many areas you look at and you wonder, especially when you get into management levels. Yeah. I laughed at one time because I don't remember which direction it was, but the CEO of, I think it was Nabisco, left Nabisco and went to work for IBM.
Okay.
And it might have been the other way around. It might have been IBM CEO went to work for Nabisco.
Right.
And it was many years ago. And I'm thinking, how the heck do you go from being the CEO of a food company to the CEO of a computer company? And then someone said, well, it's because you're still doing the same thing. It's just the widget is different.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you're saying, is that, you know, the system is the system, and what you throw into the system doesn't really matter.
Well, what happens, most sales training is focused on products, product knowledge. Get in front of or service, get in front of your prospect, show them how smart you are, and ask for their business. Well, prospects know that salespeople are highly educated on their product, and they often turn salespeople into what we call unpaid consultants, because people love to answer questions. Salespeople are great at answering questions, but what they're doing is giving it all away. They're talking too much. At Sandler,
that's a surprise, right? That salespeople talking too much.
Surprise.
We have something called the 70-30 rule. The prospect should be speaking 70% of the time, the salesperson 30%. And when we're speaking, we're asking questions. We're driving the conversation. Here's an analogy. One of the best professions for selling is psychology or a detective. Think of what a detective has to do. When he or she shows up at a crime scene, right? There's only one mission. It's to get to the truth. And that's what Sandler does. Because we recognize that buyers play games with salespeople.
Really?
They don't always tell us the truth.
No, you're kidding.
So the Sandler selling system cuts through all that stuff. We have something called an upfront contract, which is the agreement we have to tell each other no and all that I can't get into in this short period of time, to seek the truth. At Sandler, we call that pain. Pain and truth are the same thing. Find out the real reason if you could help somebody, and follow the process. And stop always closing people. Qualify people.
Okay. So no closing and you're qualifying.
Instead of the always be closing, it's always be qualifying. ABQ, always be qualifying. A qualified prospect in the Sandler language would be somebody who has pain, which is a problem with an emotional attachment to it. Can they afford you? Are they willing and able to spend the money? And is there a decision-making process in place? Pain plus budget plus decision equals qualifying. We work hard at that.
That's pretty fascinating. So there's no real, so all of those things are basically universal.
Exactly. You got it.
Now, what do you mean by an upfront contract? We all have to have lawyers and all that kind of stuff then?
Well, this is the magic dust of Sandler. It is the game changer, the absolute game changer. It's the conversation that you have with the prospect up front. It's called an adult transaction. It's a contract. Ron, we're going to be meeting for 30 minutes. I'm going to turn my cell phone off. I'm going to ask you some questions. You're going to ask me some questions. At the end of our meeting, we can be in one or two places. We can determine we're not a fit, or we can determine what a fit looks like. It's that simple. It's that conversation that the salesperson needs to drive and get that agreement with the buyer. A contract, a mutual agreement.
Well, I love, one of the things I loved when I read the book was, that I'll think about it is not one of those options you just gave.
We have 5 allowable outcomes at Sandler. We get a yes. We like yeses. And we get the check, and the check clears, by the way. We get a no.
That's a novel system.
A no can hurt a little bit, but a no does not equal never. We can get a clear next step. And that's not the same as a think it over. Hey, let's circle back in a month or two. That's not a clear next step. We could get a lesson. We could always learn something, okay? And we get a referral. Those are the 5 allowable outcomes of a sales call. As long as you're seeking those, you're using the Sandler selling system.
Interesting. We're going to continue our conversation with Scott Bailey. I want to learn more about this. I think that if you're alive, you probably are going to want to learn more about it. Can we use this before? I want to get a yes or no from you here, and then we'll dig into it in the next segment.
Go for it.
Can we use this with raising our kids?
What do you think?
There we go. That's the answer. Okay, we'll continue our conversation. Scott Bailey is with us. Sandler Training is the company. And we're chatting a little bit. Before the break, I threw this question at Scott. Can we use the system for our kids? Because we are training them. Can it help us with raising kids?
That's a great question, Ron. Anytime you're communicating with another human being, you can use Sandler. I actually present it as a communication system that you can use in sales. And David Sandler, our founder, who, with his research in psychology, applied all these techniques. You bet you can.
So it works for now he was, if I remember correctly, talking in the history, he was a sold motivational materials or something. Was that part of the background?
We work in 3 areas. We work, for those of you that are listening, if you want to draw a triangle, just draw a triangle, put success in the middle of it. Up at the top, put the word.
And I'm doing all these things.
There you go. Okay, so success. Up at the top, put attitude. That's how you're feeling and your outlook. And that's where most training is. It's motivational. Try to get you jacked up. On the right corner, right technique. Those are the techniques, like an upfront contract, like we've been talking about, it's a technique. On the area on the left, that would be behavior. We work, and that's what you're doing. And all 3 of those things are important. It's not enough just to get pumped up. You have to do the stuff. Because what's the one thing all salespeople hate to do? Prospect.
Sure.
They hate it. We at Sandler know that. We say you don't have to like cold calls, you still have to make them. Or you don't have to like prospecting, but you still have to do it. So if you had a plan, what we call a cookbook, a recipe for success that would encompass maybe one networking meeting, a radio show that you're doing, some kind of behavior that drives business, and you do it every day to a plan, to your cookbook, business is going to come in, and that's what's going to impact your attitude. So here's a Sandler rule that's one of my favorite. It's not always how you feel that determines how you act. Rather, it's how you act that determines how you feel. Just do the behavior. But you have to know what that behavior is.
So then the systems that you're talking about sound like they're not, just for the corporate exec. You could have it be an individual and come through your training process.
Individual, we have tons of individuals, a small business owner who has to sell for his or her company, a CPA who's trying to grow her practice, an immigration attorney trying to grow an estate, a financial planner. All these people are professional people, but they have to wear a sales hat. They have to do something to drive revenue.
So from a 30,000 foot level, can you walk me through what it would feel like if I was to go through the system?
I have a proven process. Every Sandler trainer does it a little bit differently, but what works for us is my clients come to a 2-day boot camp. We have those every month. In fact, I have one this week, Wednesday, Thursday. They're always the last Thursday, Friday of the month, and this is our proven way of orienting people. This is elementary Sandler, 2 days of all the Sandler rules, and then the client falls immediately into a reinforcement program, which we do virtually every Tuesday from 10:30 to noon Pacific Standard Time. And that's done using Zoom. And we ask for a 6-month commitment. That's the proven amount. Come to the boot camp and 6 months of reinforcement training. And if you want to add coaching to that, that's a little bit extra. But we know that within 6 months, that's when the dust settles, when the light bulbs go off, and that's when you get a tangible benefit of the program, because you've actually made more using the system than what you put into it.
So
your return on investment comes in about 6 months.
Okay, so I'm not waiting 6 months till I see anything.
No, you're working on it. The first process is you can't walk out of a 2-day boot camp and use Sandler. You walk out using some of the principles, 3 to 5 things.
And do you recommend reading the book before you go to that boot camp?
Anything that you could do. I ask people, say, how do I prepare? I say, come with an open mind.
Okay.
And something to write with. We'll take care of everything else.
Okay.
Actually, the more you've purged yourself of what you think Sandler is, the better, because the experience is never what people think it is. It never is.
So the other part of that, then, my opinion, and you can tell me that I'm wrong, is that every time you would go through, so if somebody went through this multiple times, they're going to probably get a different experience every time because they're in a different spot.
You go to one boot camp. You only go to one boot camp.
Oh, okay.
And then you continue. It's continue. Think of going to the gym.
I don't ever think about that.
You can't.
I mean, you know me well. I mean, look at me, Scott. Do I look like I? I go to the restaurant.
It takes constant work,
right?
Because the techniques are perishable. They're
okay.
perishable.
Okay.
You have to practice them.
And that's a big issue. Is you've got to anything you want to be good at, you have to really practice.
And that's really what's different about Sandler. Those 3 things: working on the attitude, working on the behaviors, working on the techniques concurrently. All 3 of those together. A lot of training companies will just teach you a script. That's just technique, but they're forgetting the attitudes and the behaviors.
Yeah, one of the things that, and you're spot on. One of the things I hate about scripts is, we're all human. So if I didn't ask you the right question, then now what am I supposed to do? Because I don't have the right script to respond.
We don't teach scripts.
Yeah, it's
because all you do is look and sound like everybody else.
Right.
You can recognize there are certain trainers in the real estate industry, and you can see the kind of training they've gone through because they can't differentiate themselves.
So now you mentioned that in your methodology or your journey, I guess is the right term I would use, is you increase
learning path.
Learning path. Okay. So you increased your sales 30% in a short period of time.
6 months.
6 months.
Half the work. I worked half as hard. I got my life back. I was tired of working hard.
What do you see? I mean, and that's your experience. What do you see from some of the mentees that you have?
Oh man, if a client comes to me who's done a lot of personal growth training, they can pick up on this stuff pretty quickly, and it's in maybe 6 weeks. But our metric really is 4 to 6 months. That's really when the light bulbs go off for most people. I don't try to oversell it like it's magic dust. They really need to work at this stuff.
Work at it, work hard.
Yeah. Come to training, ask questions, call us if you have an issue going on, be interactive with other people, learn from others, meet outside of the training, develop a peer group. We talked about that before. Yeah.
Yes, a lot of those things are good.
Yeah.
So it always starts with the
Two-day
two-day
boot
training,
camp,
the
right.
boot camp, the 2-day boot camp.
Nobody escapes the boot camp. That's our path. That's the onboarding for everybody.
So y'all start there, and that's what, a 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever.
Yeah.
So a full day.
8:30 to 4:30. Yeah.
8:30. Okay, so
Yeah.
figure a full day of commitment for that, and so knowing that you're not ready to write this down, I'm going to tell you anyway. Call me at 800-306-1990. I know how to get a hold of Scott, so I can put you in touch with him, and I give you my number, and you know where to find me every single day at this time. Special offers.
Yes.
We only got about a minute left.
Cost of 6 months of training is $64.90,
Okay.
$6,490 for anybody listening. And we're reference to this radio show. I'll knock $1,000 off.
Nice.
6 months of training.
For 6 months. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the boot camp and 6 months of reinforcement training that we call mastery.
Beautiful. So
$54.90.
So $54.90. So if you want that special from Scott, give me a call at 800-306-1990. I'll give you Scott's number. It'll be in the show notes, so you'll be able to see that as well, or how to reach Scott in the show notes as well. It's pretty simple. I mean, he's got an email address that's really tough. Scott.bailey@sandler.com. Real tough to remember that one. But again, if you want to reach him, give me a call at 800-306-1990.